It began with a crash on a Sydney street, but it quickly spiraled into one of the most bizarre mysteries of recent years. The name Yang Lanlan now echoes through courtrooms, online forums, and whispered conversations in both Australia and China. Who is this young woman who appeared out of nowhere, wrapped in luxury, protected by secrecy, and pursued by rumor? Is she simply a wealthy heiress, or does her identity reach into the highest levels of Chinese power? Stay with us as we unravel the story, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold scandals that others won't dare expose. The story of Yang Lanlan begins not with what is known, but with what is conspicuously hidden. She did not step into public life through the ordinary path of business, politics, or entertainment. Instead, she arrived like a shadow wrapped in luxury. A woman whose every appearance confounded expectations and left more questions than answers. When her name surfaced after the Rolls-Royce crash in Sydney, journalists and bystanders rushed to learn more about her, only to find that almost nothing was traceable. No social media presence could be confirmed. No business filings appeared in public records. No clear family connections could be drawn. What existed instead was a trail of extravagant possessions and carefully staged glimpses into a life that seemed detached from reality. Her car alone was enough to stir interest. A Tiffany-blue Rolls-Royce Cullinan, worth around $1.5 million, was the vehicle she crashed. Yet, it was not her only luxury automobile. Investigators and reporters later discovered that over a dozen supercars rotated through her Sydney residence in just a few months. One garage inspection revealed a Rolls-Royce Ghost convertible priced at nearly $800,000, tucked away alongside receipts from high-end auctions. These were not the possessions of someone dabbling in wealth. They belonged to someone living at a level where price tags ceased to matter. She did not flaunt this lifestyle through public bragging. Instead, her quiet accumulation of rare cars, couture clothing, and jewelry spoke louder than any words could. Her wardrobe, documented in glimpses outside court and during police check-ins, reinforced the sense of unreachable privilege. She wore vintage Chanel coats priced over $18,000, Chanel hats costing several thousand more, and Prada sunglasses paired with jewelry so exclusive that experts suggested it was reserved for only the wealthiest clientele. Her shoes, brooches, and earrings were not mass-market luxury items, but limited pieces with estimated values in the hundreds of thousands. Every detail of her appearance hinted at someone with both limitless financial access and a deliberate desire to remain out of reach. Even in these rare public moments, her face was obscured by hats, sunglasses, or dim lighting, as if anonymity itself was her most prized possession. The first official appearance of her name in the headlines came through the crash, but it was the absence of background information that shocked the public. Normally, when a wealthy figure is caught up in scandal, reporters can unearth biographies, past controversies, or at least some trace of their rise. In Lanlan's case, there was silence. Journalists scoured Chinese records and Australian registries, yet found no companies under her name, no verified family lineage, and no professional ties. In a world where information about even the most obscure individuals can be unearthed, Yang Lanlan was an anomaly. She existed only in photographs leaving police stations, grainy courtroom video feeds, and speculative posts online. This vacuum became fertile ground for rumor. Online forums and Chinese social platforms began to fill the gap with increasingly dramatic claims. Some posts allege she had paid a $70 million bail to secure her release, a figure so large it was nearly laughable but spread rapidly because of how little else was known. Others suggested her bank deposits totaled $270 billion, an amount exceeding the reserves of small nations. Australian authorities were forced to step in and publicly deny these rumors, clarifying that no monetary bail was required, and that the viral numbers circulating online were not only false, but wildly exaggerated. Still, the mere existence of these rumors underscored how desperate people were to explain her aura of untouchable wealth. Her court appearance only heightened the mystery. when she was expected to face the public for the first time, she instead appeared via video link. She sat beside her lawyer, dressed in black, her face shadowed under her now signature Chanel hat. The lighting was dim, her responses were short, and the entire process lasted less than 10 minutes. Observers hoping for clarity instead left with even greater uncertainty. Why was she hidden from public view when most defendants stand in open court? Why was her team comprised of both Western and Chinese-Australian lawyers, with reputations for handling the most sensitive cases? The layers of protection suggested she was not just another wealthy young woman caught up in a reckless mistake, but someone whose identity demanded concealment. Crowds outside the courthouse reinforced this sense of spectacle. Nearly 100 Chinese Australians, many of them international students, gathered alongside Western reporters, straining to glimpse her. Some claimed it was the first time they had seen such a large group of Chinese citizens show up at a Sydney courthouse for a single defendant. The turnout was unusual and left even seasoned journalists baffled. Why did this case, among thousands in Australia, spark such interest specifically among the Chinese community? The answer, many whispered, was simple. It was not the accident that drew them, but the chance to confirm whether the rumors about her true lineage were real. The result was a paradox. On one hand, Yang Lanlan was visible in her luxury, her cars, her clothing, and the public spectacle of her trial. On the other hand, she was invisible in her background, her history, and her family ties. This combination created an aura of enigma that was almost cinematic. People who saw her described being stunned not only by her wealth, but by the way she carried herself, silent and concealed, as though she were accustomed to people knowing they should not ask questions. Every small detail, the Gucci shoe left at the crash scene, the stack of cash withdrawn at an ATM, the careful avoidance of direct answers, fed into a growing narrative that she was more than just a young socialite. She was someone with access to power that stretched far beyond Sydney's borders. For those trying to understand her, the biggest clue came not from what was revealed, but from what was deliberately left unsaid. The lack of accessible records, the presence of an elite legal team, and the extraordinary efforts to hide her image suggested intentional protection. If she were simply another heiress or celebrity, her identity would not be this difficult to confirm. In that silence, speculation began to thrive. Was she connected to China's political elite? Was she the daughter or granddaughter of someone at the very top? Or was she, as some critics argued, merely a wealthy figure who had become the latest victim of internet myth-making? The truth remained shrouded, but the mystery itself became the engine driving the story forward. The fascination with Yang Lanlan is therefore not only about the accident, or even the legal consequences she faces. It is about the strange combination of undeniable wealth and absolute obscurity. Every Rolls-Royce, every piece of jewelry, every whispered rumor about her lineage adds to the enigma. What people know for certain is vanishingly small, but what they suspect expands with each passing day. In that tension between fact and speculation, her story has become more than a criminal case. It has become a mirror for society's questions about privilege, justice, and the invisible structures of power that shape the lives of those we are not supposed to see. The speculation about Yang Lanlan's true identity quickly took on a life of its own. With so little concrete information available, the vacuum was filled by theories that ranged from plausible to outlandish. Yet each one gained traction because people were desperate for an explanation that matched the scale of her wealth and the secrecy surrounding her. Among the most popular theories, one dominated the online chatter more than any other. The idea that she was secretly related to Xi Jinping, perhaps even his illegitimate daughter. It was a theory that at first seemed outrageous, but the more it was repeated, the more it began to take on an air of possibility in the minds of those who wanted to believe that her extraordinary treatment could only be explained by ties to the most powerful man in China. The argument for this theory rested on a few key points. First was her complete lack of a public footprint. In the modern world, even the children of China's elite leave some kind of mark, whether through school records, social media, or corporate affiliations. Yet Lanlan was a blank slate. It was as though someone had gone to great lengths to erase her from public existence. That kind of erasure suggested to many that her identity was being actively hidden. Second was her extravagant wealth, far beyond what most children of the rich in China are known to possess. While many so-called princelings flaunt wealth, hers seemed bottomless, with multiple unregistered supercars, couture wardrobes, and jewelry that even seasoned appraisers called rare. Finally, there were the uncanny similarities. Some bloggers compared her features to photos of Xi's mother in her youth, with one claim that artificial intelligence facial analysis had shown a high degree of similarity. To the skeptical eye, such comparisons could be coincidence, but to believers, they were proof hiding in plain sight. The theory gained even more weight when independent commentators pointed out that China's ruling families are known for shielding their offspring abroad. Xi's known daughter, Xi Mingzi, lived quietly in the United States, attending Harvard under a pseudonym. If one daughter could be hidden so effectively, why not another? Supporters of the theory argued that if Yang Lanlan was indeed the child of Xi, or one of his siblings, that would explain the immense effort to keep her away from prying eyes, the elite legal representation at her trial, and the silence of both Chinese and Australian authorities about her background. It also would explain why the case had drawn such fascination among Chinese expatriates. For them, this was not just about a car crash, but about possibly exposing one of the best-kept secrets of the Chinese leadership. Not everyone accepted this explanation, however. Others pointed to a different theory, that she was descended from one of the old military families that once held significant influence in China. The name Yang itself is associated with notable figures in the People's Liberation Army, including generals like Yang Chengwu and Yang Dongming. Some claimed she was their great-granddaughter or otherwise tied to that lineage. Military families, it was argued, may no longer wield the same direct political clout they once did, but they still retain vast economic networks, property holdings, and connections that could easily explain her fortune. This theory painted her not as a hidden princess of the ruling party, but as a scion of a family that had once stood close to the center of power and now used that inherited privilege to live abroad in unimaginable luxury. There was also a softer version of the military lineage theory that suggested she was the child of mid-level elites who had moved wealth overseas to protect it from political risk in China. In this telling, her fortune was not necessarily political protection, but the result of capital flight, with families funneling money out of China and into property, cars, and assets in places like Sydney. If true, this would not make her extraordinary, so much as an extreme example of a well-known trend. The rich in China moving their fortunes abroad to safeguard them against sudden political changes at home. Still, neither of these explanations completely satisfied the public. The sheer scale of the resources at Lanlan's disposal, combined with the secrecy, made it difficult for people to accept that she was merely the daughter of a general or a wealthy businessman. This was especially true after details of her legal defense emerged. She had retained not just one, but a team of lawyers, including a seasoned barrister, with decades of experience and the kind of fees that only corporate giants or the ultra-wealthy could afford. Observers described her legal team as a troubleshooter squad, designed to protect high-profile clients, a unit that not only defended cases, but anticipated how to shield a client's identity, exploit procedural loopholes, and minimize exposure. The sheer sophistication of this defense suggested someone with backing far greater than the average heiress. As these theories spread, the online world turned her into a kind of cipher, a canvas onto which people projected their frustrations and suspicions about elite privilege. Some were convinced she was a red princess, proof that the ruling class could operate above the law even in foreign countries. Others believed she was an example of how wealth from China's rapid rise was being funneled out of the country, draining resources while ordinary people struggled. For those in the Chinese diaspora, her story resonated as a symbol of the unbridgeable gap between ordinary citizens and the children of the elite. That so many international students crowded the courthouse was telling. To them, Yang Lanlan was not just a defendant in a car crash. She was a real-life embodiment of the privileges they could only watch from afar. At the same time, critics began warning that she had become what one Australian journalist called a rumor basket. Every theory, every wild claim, every suspicion was being thrown onto her name. Stories circulated that she had paid police directly, that a mysterious sum of $2 million had been funneled into the court system on her behalf, that the Chinese embassy was intervening quietly in the case. None of these claims could be substantiated, yet they gained traction simply because the alternative was silence. In the absence of transparency, the wildest rumors found fertile ground. For many, it no longer mattered whether the theories were true. What mattered was that they felt plausible in a world where the wealthy and powerful so often appear untouchable. Her story was no longer about a single woman in Sydney. It had become a stage for broader frustrations about power and inequality. People speculated endlessly about whether she was connected to the family of Xi Jinping or the military, but underneath those details was a shared sense that her case revealed the enormous gulf between ordinary justice and elite privilege. If she were truly connected to the very top of the Chinese leadership, then her case would not just be about drunk driving, but about how much influence a single family could extend across borders. If she were from a wealthy military family, then it showed how the privileges of one generation could be preserved in ways that insulated descendants from accountability. And if she were simply a wealthy individual caught in the storm of rumors, then her story demonstrated how public anger and speculation could build a mythology in the absence of facts. Whichever theory one leaned toward, each carried its own implications. If she were Xi's hidden daughter, it raised questions about diplomatic pressure and whether Australian courts would be allowed to treat her like any other defendant. If she were descended from generals, it revealed how much lingering influence the old military aristocracy still held in Chinese society. And if the rumors were largely baseless, then it exposed how quickly conspiracy theories can grow in the digital age, shaping public perception far more than the truth itself. What tied these theories together was the belief that Yang Lanlan was not an ordinary person. She was something else. Someone connected to deeper currents of power that the public rarely sees, but often suspects. Her appearance at court via video link, her refusal to take a breath test, her wealth hidden behind layers of shell companies and unregistered cars. All of these became the ingredients of a modern mystery. People did not just want to know what happened on the night of the crash. They wanted to know who she really was and why she seemed untouchable. Theories offered answers, but none could be confirmed. And so the mystery only deepened, fueling more obsession and more speculation with each passing week. The mystery surrounding Yang Lanlan has grown larger than the incident that first brought her name into the spotlight. The crash and its legal consequences remain serious, but what captivates people across Australia, China, and beyond is the sense that her story touches on something much deeper. At its heart lies the question of whether justice is truly blind, or whether certain individuals can move through the world shielded by wealth, influence, and connections so powerful that the normal rules no longer apply. For many, the case has become less about a single defendant and more about what she represents: the intersection of privilege, secrecy, and the limits of accountability. One of the reasons the speculation has spiraled so widely is because her story resonates with long-standing frustrations. In China, there is a widespread belief that the families of top officials, often called the Red Nobility, live in a world far removed from ordinary citizens. They enjoy access to wealth, travel, and protection that few others can imagine. To see someone in Sydney, thousands of miles away, living in such extravagance and seemingly shielded from exposure fits neatly into that narrative. Even if Yang is not who some believe her to be, she has become a symbol of those frustrations. embodying the anger and suspicion people feel toward privilege that appears immune to consequence. Her case also highlights the tension between the rule of law and the perception of influence. On paper, the charges against her are serious. Driving under the influence and refusing a breath test are both offenses that can carry prison terms, and causing grievous bodily harm can lead to sentences of a decade or more. Yet the way her case has unfolded, the video appearances, the elite legal team, the extraordinary crowd of onlookers, makes many wonder whether the outcome will be the same as it would be for an ordinary person. Each small detail, from her designer clothing to the rumors of anonymous payments, reinforces the idea that she is being treated differently. For those watching closely, the case has become a test of whether a justice system can hold someone accountable when they appear to be backed by invisible power. Beyond the courtroom, the digital frenzy around her name underscores how stories like this evolve in the modern world. With so little official information, online communities have built their own narratives, often blending fact with speculation. Some of these theories may never be proven, yet they take on lives of their own, shaping how people understand the case. In a way, the rumors themselves have become part of the story, reflecting how quickly the public will fill a void when answers are withheld. Yang Lanlan is no longer just a woman facing charges in Sydney. She is a canvas for larger anxieties about corruption, privilege, and the reach of political influence across borders. As the next court date approaches, the unanswered questions remain. Will she face justice in the same way any other defendant would? Will the mystery of her background ever be resolved? Or will the silence continue, leaving only speculation in its place? What is clear is that her story has struck a chord far beyond the details of one car crash. It has tapped into global conversations about inequality, transparency, and the hidden lives of the powerful. Whether she is truly tied to China's ruling elite or simply caught in the whirlwind of rumor, Yang Lanlan has become a symbol of something larger. The suspicion that some people live beyond the reach of rules that bind everyone else. The truth about Yang Lanlan may never be fully revealed. She might be the hidden daughter of a leader, the descendant of a military dynasty, or simply a figure caught in a whirlwind of speculation. What matters most is how her story reflects a deeper struggle between privilege and accountability, secrecy and transparency. The Sydney crash was only the beginning. What comes next could expose hidden networks of influence, or bury them even deeper. If you want to follow the latest twists in this case and more stories that peel back the curtain on power, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned.